You know, they say revenge is a dish best served cold. Well, let me tell you about the coldest dish I ever served, and it took exactly 3 years to prepare. My name is Marcus, and this is the story of how my former boss went from calling me deadweight to begging me for a job. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. 3 years ago, I was working at TechFlow Solutions, a mid-sized software company in downtown Seattle. I'd been there for 5 years, working my way up from junior developer to senior analyst. I thought I was doing well. My projects were always on time, my code was clean, and clients specifically requested me for their accounts. But my boss, Richard Blackwood, never seemed to notice. Richard was one of those guys who wore expensive suits, but had never written a line of code in his life. He'd inherited his position when his father-in-law sold him shares in the company. To Richard, I was just another employee. Expendable, replaceable, forgettable. The tension started building about 6 months before everything exploded. Richard had been making comments about optimizing the workforce and cutting dead weight. I should have seen the signs, but I was focused on a major project for our biggest client, Meridian Corp. I was working 60-hour weeks, debugging their entire system architecture. Then came March 15th, my 30th birthday. I remember the date because it was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it became the worst day of my professional life. I walked into the office that morning expecting maybe a small cake from the team, or at least a happy birthday from my colleagues. Instead, I found Richard waiting by my desk with HR representative Sarah Chen and a security guard. "Marcus," Richard said, not even bothering to lower his voice. "We need to talk." The entire floor went silent. 30 pairs of eyes were suddenly focused on us. I felt my stomach drop, but I tried to stay professional. "Sure, Richard. Should we go to your office?" "No need," he replied with a smirk that I'll never forget. "This won't take long. We're letting you go effective immediately." I stood there, stunned. "I'm sorry, what? Is this about the Meridian project?" "Because I'm actually ahead of schedule." Richard cut me off with a wave of his hand. "Marcus, let's be honest here. You've been dead weight for months. Your productivity is down, your attitude is poor, and frankly, we can get 2 junior developers for what we're paying you." The words hit me like a physical blow. Dead weight, in front of the entire office. On my birthday. "Richard, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," he continued, clearly enjoying the moment. "You're expensive, you're slow, and you're holding this company back. Sarah will explain your severance package, which, by the way, is more generous than you deserve." But Richard wasn't done. As the security guard started escorting me to my desk to pack my things, Richard raised his voice so the entire floor could hear. "Let this be a lesson to everyone," he announced. "This company rewards performance, not tenure. If you're not contributing, if you're just coasting along thinking your job is secure, think again. We don't carry dead weight here." I felt every eye in the office on me as I packed my personal items into a cardboard box. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from pure rage. 5 years of dedication, of late nights and weekend work, of going above and beyond for every project, and this was how it ended. As I walked toward the elevator, I heard Richard talking to Tom, one of the junior developers. "Don't worry about the Meridian project," Richard was saying. "It's not as complicated as Marcus made it seem. You and Jenny can handle it. Probably do it better and faster than he ever could." That's when I realized what was really happening. Richard wasn't just firing me. He was stealing credit for my work and handing it off to cheaper employees. The Meridian project that I'd spent months architecting was going to be completed by others, and Richard would take all the credit. That night, sitting in my apartment with a bottle of whiskey and a head full of rage, I made a decision. I wasn't going to just find another job and move on. I was going to make Richard pay for what he'd done, but I'm not stupid. I wasn't going to do anything illegal or unethical. I was going to beat him at his own game. Business. The first thing I did was call my contact at Meridian Corp, Janet Morrison. Janet and I had worked closely together for 2 years, and she trusted my judgment completely. "Marcus," she said when I explained what had happened, "I'm so sorry. Richard told us you'd left for a better opportunity." "That's not exactly how it happened," I replied. "Janet, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. How confident are you in TechFlow's ability to complete your project without me?" There was a long pause. "Honestly, not very. You were the only one who really understood our system. I was actually planning to call you tomorrow because we're already seeing issues with the handover. That's when I knew I had my opening. Over the next 6 months, I did 3 things simultaneously. First, I started my own consulting company, Marcus Tech Solutions. Second, I began reaching out to every contact I'd made during my 5 years at TechFlow. And third, I started documenting every mistake TechFlow made on the projects I used to handle. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. Without me, TechFlow started missing deadlines. The Meridian project, which I could have completed in my sleep, became a disaster. Tom and Jenny were good developers, but they didn't understand the client's unique requirements the way I did. Within 3 months, Meridian had terminated their contract with TechFlow and hired my new company instead. The project that Richard said was not as complicated as Marcus made it seem ended up being worth $2.3 million to my company, but that was just the beginning. One by one, I started winning over TechFlow's other major clients. I wasn't stealing them. I was simply offering better service, faster delivery, and more competitive pricing. When you don't have the overhead of a fancy downtown office and a bloated management structure, you can afford to undercut your competition. By the end of my 2nd year in business, Marcus Tech Solutions had grown to 15 employees and was generating $8 million in annual revenue. TechFlow, meanwhile, was struggling. They'd lost 6 major clients, their stock price had dropped 40%, and rumors were circulating about potential layoffs. That's when I got the call I'd been waiting for. Marcus? The voice on the phone was familiar, but strained. This is Richard Blackwood from TechFlow. I was wondering if we could meet for coffee. I almost laughed out loud. Sure, Richard. I have some time tomorrow afternoon. We met at a Starbucks near his office, the same office where he'd humiliated me 2 years earlier. Richard looked terrible. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair was disheveled, and he had the desperate look of a man watching his world collapse. Marcus, he began, I want to apologize for how things ended between us. I made some mistakes, and I realize now that letting you go was one of them. I sipped my coffee and waited for him to continue. The thing is, Richard went on, TechFlow is going through some challenges right now. We've lost some clients and we're looking to restructure. I was hoping you might consider coming back. As a partner, maybe. We could really use your expertise. I set down my coffee cup and looked Richard straight in the eye. Richard, I said calmly, do you remember what you called me the day you fired me? His face went pale. Marcus, deadweight, I continued. You called me deadweight. In front of the entire office. On my birthday. Richard shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I was under a lot of pressure. I said things I didn't mean. Oh, but you did mean them, I interrupted. And you know what? You were right about one thing. TechFlow was carrying deadweight, but it wasn't me. I pulled out my phone and showed him a document. This is a purchase agreement, Richard. As of this morning, Marcus Tech Solutions has acquired a controlling interest in TechFlow Solutions. Congratulations, you now work for me. The color drained completely from Richard's face. That's impossible. The board was very motivated to sell, I explained, especially when they learned that their biggest remaining client, Hartwell Industries, was planning to terminate their contract next month. Funny thing about Hartwell, they called me last week asking if I'd be interested in taking over their account. Richard stared at me in shock. You orchestrated all of this. I didn't orchestrate anything, I replied. I just built a better company and let the market decide. But here's the thing, Richard. I'm not a vindictive person. I'm offering you a position at the new TechFlow. Junior account manager. The salary is $45,000 a year, about what you'd pay 2 junior developers. I stood up and put on my coat. Think about it, Richard, but don't take too long. We don't carry dead weight at the new TechFlow. As I walked away, I could hear Richard calling after me, but I didn't turn around. 3 years of planning, 3 years of building, and 3 years of waiting had finally paid off. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting ahead.